Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining me this afternoon for a little bit of a session on the 2019 revaluation and the impact on property taxes. Since we sent out the notices of value change last week, we've been getting a lot of questions around how the values will impact property taxes. And we're seeing that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we want to make sure that we get the correct information out to the public so that everybody understands how property taxes work as it relates to changes in property value. And so we're going to talk a little bit about some of the myths and the misinformation. We're going to talk a little bit about how property taxes are calculated, because I think that's important. And then we'll talk a little bit about the revenue neutral tax rate and how that would apply in this circumstance. So let's turn to the myths and the misinformation. The first myth that we're hearing is that revaluation is causing the rise in real estate prices. And that's just not correct, because what property revaluation does is it reports what the market is currently doing. Revaluation does not drive the market one way or another. It's just reporting what the real estate market is currently doing. So nobody should think that revaluation is causing their property values to either rise or decrease. The second myth is that the increase in my property value means an increase in my property taxes. And that, again, that's not necessarily the case. The cost of county services and how we put the budget together will really drive what the property tax ultimately will be. And people really need to keep that in mind. The third one is my property value increased significantly, so it must be wrong. Again, that's not necessarily true. As we said, the value that you received is supposed to be reflective of the market, the current market. So what you can do is you can go to mecreval.com and you can look online and you can see the sales that were used in calculating your particular value. And that will give you a sense of whether or not your value is correct. If you think it is not correct, we really encourage you to file an informal review at the assessor's office or call and get some additional information so that if adjustments need to be made, we can go ahead and take care of that. The next myth is that it costs money to have my assessment reviewed or appealed. Again, this is a myth. You do not need to hire an attorney or hire any professional help to help you navigate this process. We have an outstanding customer service team that is waiting to help you navigate the process and help you do what you need to do to make sure that your value accurately reflects the property that you own. And then finally, the last myth is that there's no point in submitting an informal review if I know I'm going to file a formal appeal. And again, this is not correct. The formal appeals are handled by the Board of Equalization and Review. And the Board of Equalization and Review is not going to convene until April 8th of 2019. So during this time, before the BER actually starts to meet, you can have an informal review, have an appraiser look at your value, and see if there's any changes that need to be made. Having said that, after that point, if you still feel like you want to file a formal review, you're still able to do so. So filing an informal review does not prohibit you from filing a formal appeal later in the process. So we encourage you to take advantage of all the resources that we have made available for you. So let's move on from here. The next section is how are property taxes calculated? So let's say in Mecklenburg County, we have 3 homes and we have a budget of $1,000. And the 3 homes are valued at $100,000, $110,000, and $120,000. So altogether, the value of the property is $330,000. And as I said, our budget is $1,000. So to calculate the tax rate, we take the $1,000, we divide it by the total value of $330,000, and we get a tax rate of 30 cents 0.30 per $100 of assessed valuation. So how does that apply to your tax bill? How does that calculate your tax bill? So we take your value and we multiply it by the tax rate, and we end up to see what your tax bill will be. So in this case, the $100,000 home will have a tax bill of $303. The $110,000 home will have a tax bill of $333. And the $120,000 home will have a tax bill of $363. Altogether, that equals the $1,000 county budget. So what happens in a revaluation? So for example, in this example, we have our 3 homes, which comprises the entire county, and 2 homes, their values went up by 5%, and the 3rd home, their value went up by 10%. So now the value of all 3 of those homes is $352,500. Our county budget stayed the same at $1,000. And the tax rate in this example is now 28.37 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. So as you can see, as the values go up and the budget stays the same, the property tax rate will start to decline. So how does this apply to their tax bill? So in this case, the $105,000 home sees their tax bill drop to $298. The $115,500 home sees their tax bill dropped to $327. And the $132,000 home that had the 10% increase will actually see their property tax bill increase slightly by $11. But all told, we've collected $1,000 for our county budget. So let's say we have revaluation and we have an increase in our county services or an increase in our budget, and we also have some new construction. What does that do? So again, we have our 3 homes, and now we have a 4th home. And now altogether, those 4 homes total $502,500. But again, our budget's going to go up. So instead of our budget being $1,000, our budget is now $1,200. So we calculate our property tax rate, and the property tax rate is now 23.88 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. So again, as you can see, the property tax rate drops again. So how does that apply to property tax bills? So again, in this case, the $105,000 home sees their tax bill drop to $251. The $115,500 home sees their tax bill drop to $276. And the $132,000 home sees their tax bill drop to $315. And the new house, which is new on the tax roll, sees their tax bill at $358. All told, we've collected $1,200 to support our county budget. So now let's move on to revenue neutral, because there's been a lot of discussion about revenue neutral and what the impact of that would be on somebody's tax bill. So what is revenue neutral? Well, what it is a calculation of the tax rate that would generate the same revenue, accounting for growth, because we have growth in the economy. It provides for comparison of the tax rate before and after revaluation. It is published with the budget per the general statute, so it's required by law that we publish the revenue neutral tax rate. It's calculated only after all the values are known. So we don't have that available to you yet because we're still working on finalizing all the values. And it is a single value. It is one property tax value. What it is not required to be adopted. It's a value that it is not a value that varies by different property types or locations. So we don't have a different revenue neutral rate for commercial versus residential versus one part of the county versus another part of the county. It is not impacted by the rate of the city of Charlotte or the 6 towns. And it is not impacted by a calculation that factors changes in collection rate or one-time revenues or annualized expenses. So let's give an example of how we would calculate a revenue neutral tax rate. So for the current fiscal year that we're in, fiscal year 19, the total value of property is $129.7 billion. Our tax rate is 82.32 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, and that generates about $1.1 billion in property taxes. So for purposes of our example, we're going to increase property values by about 40% because that is what we think the median increase is or the average increase is. So in order to generate the $1.1 billion in property taxes that we have in the current year, we need a tax rate of 58.62 cents of $100 per assessed valuation. But we're also allowed to add on a little bit of growth, and we calculate that. We take the average annual percent increase due to improvements since the last revaluation, and that average is 2.36%. So we add that to the 58.62 cents, and so our revenue neutral tax rate is 60 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. So let's go through some tax bill scenarios so you can see how that would apply. So our first example, and again this is an example, is a median home value. So for fiscal year 2019, we have a tax rate of 82.32 cents. We have a home value of $154,100. We have the value of motor vehicles, which is $23,944, for a total county tax bill of $1,466. And the value of your vehicles is important here because the value of your vehicles, when it gets taxed at the new rate, will be taxed at a lower rate. So the amount of money that you'll be paying on your vehicle taxes will actually go down. And I think that's an important thing that people should remember. So let's take this medium home value, $154,000. And we laid out 3 different scenarios. In the first scenario, the value's gone up 28.84%. The second, it goes up by 40.4%. And the last scenario, it goes up by 56.82%. So using the revenue neutral tax rate of 60 cents per $100 of assessed valuation, you can see that the change in the tax bill per month for the first scenario is $10.91 per month lower. The second scenario, it is $2 per month lower. And then for the high scenario, where the value went up by 56.82%, the property tax will go up by $10.66 per month. So what about a home value that's below the median, a lower home value? So in this case, we'll use $104,400 for the home value. Again, the value of the vehicle stays the same, and the total county tax bill would be $1,057. The value of that home went up by 28.84%. The total tax bill would go down by $8.83 per month. If it went up by 40.4%, the total tax bill would go down by $2.75 per month. And if it went up at the high end of 56.82%, the bill would go up by $5.75 per month. Next, we'll do a property that's above the median, a home value of $242,200. Again, vehicle stays the same. The county tax bill would be $2,191. If that home value went up by 28.84%, the total tax bill would go down by $14.58 per month. If it went up by 40.4%, the tax bill would go down by 58 cents per month. And if it went up by 56.82%, the bill would go up by $19.33 per month. And then finally, what about what we will call a really high value property, a value of about $500,000? In this scenario, if that home went up by 28.84%, the total tax bill in this case would go down by 25.33 cents per month. If it went up by 40.4%, it would go down by $3.58 per month. And if it went up by 56.8%, it would go up by $44.58 per month. So what are some of the key points here? One is that the new construction actually helps to absorb some of those increases because there's more property value to be able to cover the cost of providing essential county services. The property tax rate will be calculated based on the entire tax base and the cost of providing essential county services. In addition, there are other revenues that we use when we build our budget, like sales tax. So these are also used to provide essential county services and will help offset the impact of property taxes. And more importantly, the revenue neutral tax rate does not necessarily equate to having no change to the individual tax bill. And so in conclusion, what I'd like to say is that we have always been very responsible in putting forth our county budgets, making sure that we take the needs of the citizen in mind, and we will continue to do that as we move through this revaluation process. So thank you for being here today, and with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
We actually don't have any questions. We had a couple people say thank you.
Okay.
One person who said that they were a little overwhelmed as a new homeowner by the notice that they got, so they appreciated the live stream.
Terrific. Well, if you don't have any questions now, that's fine. But if you find that you do have questions, you can certainly contact me. My email is dena.diorio@mecnc.gov. You can also go to www.mecreval.gov, and you can find all the information that you need about reval. We are here for you through this process. We want to help you in any way that we can and make sure that you get comfortable with your new value. So thank you for being here.